Hello, and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansevieri.
And Amy Cornell.
And Happy New Year, y'all. Listen, we are so excited to be back. This is our 6th year doing this podcast. I cannot believe we've been doing this for 6 years, Amy.
I know. Isn't that wild?
It's so crazy. And, you know, it's one of those things that I think this was actually in 2020 when we were talking about doing this podcast and and trying to come up with show ideas. And who knew that we would last for 6 years, honestly.
I know. I'm very, when we started this, it was so crazy. We're like, okay, do people want to hear this stuff? Because we want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it was such a more inspiring and fun medium than the blog, because the blog is super helpful. And I love that we have so much in writing for people that prefer that format. But in terms of us being able to riff off of each other and have conversations around this, I think it really helps a lot of authors fully wrap their minds around these concepts versus, just only seeing, the core pieces in writing, us being able to go back and forth and give examples and things like that. It's just different.
Yeah, it is. And the other piece of it, though, too, is that I think I kind of like what you said, so we can riff off of each other. People have commented a lot and that they like kind of our chemistry and how we run these shows. But it's also, when you're in someone's ear,
Right.
I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like the content is absorbed better.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So, and by the way, we also want to thank y'all for your show ideas and for the reviews. We're starting the year with 102 reviews and ratings. We would love to get to 200 by the end of 2026. Y'all have your marching orders. Thank you. Thank you so much. Amy put in the show notes, by the way, a really simple, easy to understand way to leave a review. So definitely be sure and check that out. Also want to remind you before we dig into the show, text the word podcast to 888-402-8940. And then you can talk to us directly, send us show ideas, show feedback, all the things. I'm really excited. So December 26th, if y'all listened to that episode, it was really short, but we talked about where we're going in the new year. So this is the first episode of where we're going in the new year. And I am so excited about, I'm so excited about this episode in particular, the kickoff, because if I do say so myself, I think it's a really smart framework to start off the new year. So we're talking about what actually predicts book sales. And a lot of times authors will say to me, what sells books when I do one-on-one consultations. And I'll say, well, it's not really one thing. It's cumulative of doing all of the right things. But then on the other side of it, right, there is signals versus noise. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we're unpacking in this show, right?
Yes, I love that phrase, signals versus noise. And it's such an easy way to say, to kind of categorize what you're doing.
Right, exactly. So the difference, and let's talk a little bit about the difference, because I think it was going to really help to give authors a framework of the difference between the two. And I think as we start to unpack this, you're going to go, oh my gosh, you're going to have quite a few aha moments, because I did as we were developing this show. So signals tell us why something is happening. Right? Noise just tell us that something is happening. Okay. And signals, so, repeatable patterns tied to buyer behavior. Okay. Signals generally equals book sales. Noise is really just surface level activity. And we're going to give you some more examples during this show, because I think it's really helpful to give you other examples of that you can look at kind of in your own, in the work that you're doing. But it's surface level activity that feels exciting, but doesn't reliably translate to sales. Okay. So an example of noise might be that you launched your book and it spiked on day one and you got a bestseller flag on Amazon and you screen grabbed it, and that's super exciting. And by day 3, the book was languishing somewhere around 4 million in terms of sales rank on Amazon. So noise is like applause. It's loud, but it doesn't always tell you who bought a ticket. Signals are really your receipts. I mean, Amy, does that make sense? Does that analogy kind of make sense?
Yes, I love that idea of applause. Like, yay, you're doing stuff. But it's
Right.
like, what am I doing? Tell me what I'm doing. And
Right.
that's part of it too, is that you're doing things, but is what you're doing working? And we get so many emails about that too, right, Penny? Like how many people email us and it's like, I'm doing things, but I'm pretty sure it's not working and I'm stuck, you know?
Right. Right. So if you think about the two, so if you think of signals being the receipts and noise just being applause, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because so that example that I gave, the bestseller flag on day one, yay, you did a good thing, your book launched, woohoo. But then all of a sudden, nothing is really going on. And maybe you sold, 50 books on day one, yay you, but then by day three, nothing's really happening.
Right.
So
exactly.
The noise can sell books in a small pocket of time, but the signals is the thing that's really going to carry you through. So a signal, to kind of break this down a little bit further, a signal has to meet three criteria, right? It has to reflect reader intent, right? It correlates directly to conversion, obviously, or retention if you're signing people up for your newsletter. And then the biggest piece of this is that it shows up consistently, right? It's not just a one-off spike like the bestseller example. Okay. And that's where, like, if you've had situations in your own book marketing experience where something has really skyrocketed and you're really excited, right? So it skyrocketed on Tuesday, and then by Friday, everything is kind of back to where it was. Again, that's going to be noise, right? Mm-hmm. So let's break this down. So we have 5 signals that we're going to talk about. So the first is reader response. So reviews and ratings, the quality of the reviews and ratings, right? So it's not just the number of the reviews, but the pattern, the average ranking, the wording, and the consistency, right?
I look at all those things when authors first reach out to us, honestly, Penny.
Right, exactly. The thing about it is, though, too, is that reviews are far more, readers are far more influenced by the review language than the star count once you pass the 10 to 15 reviews.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, are you getting, taking a look at the reviews, are you just getting like a lot of noise where you have a bunch of reviews that just say, good book, nice read? Like, those are vague, potentially bought reviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unethically bought reviews, for lack of a better way to phrase that.
Right.
And a number of retail studies have shown that, 4.4 and a 4.7 average review rating converts better than even a straight 5-point review rating on a book, which is interesting. And it's funny because USA Today, a whole bunch of years ago, also cited it in a different study. So a lot of times we get authors who are just like, I just want to get more reviews. I want to get more reviews. And I get it. Chasing the review feels like a lifelong effort, right? Mm-hmm. But having a bunch of reviews on your retail page that are just like 5-star, great book, like that, first off, that's super vague and it's not going to help to drive a buy. But reviews that are consistently mentioning, like, what's the emotional payoff? What's the, is it a slow burn? Is it twisty? Is it helpful? Did it change your life in some way? Did it help you elevate your career? Those are things that readers want to look for, that the readers look for mm-hmm. in, in a book. And I think
Yeah.
that when your reviews are so, and I know we're going to talk about this in another show too, but when your reviews aren't aligned with the book in some way. So I mentioned vague reviews like good book, nice read, et cetera, et cetera. But when your reviews aren't aligned with the book, like I thought I was getting, or I was expecting more of, there is a general alignment problem. And we typically don't panic over a single bad review,
No.
but we do pay attention when the same complaint keeps showing up multiple times. I mean, would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't control someone's experience with your book.
For
I mean,
sure. Yeah.
that is, if you're a control freak and that bothers you, then stop what you're doing. Like, because you really have to embrace that element of this if you're going to make it in publishing, because you have to have a thick skin when it comes to reviews, because the reality is not everybody is going to resonate with your book. But if what they're saying is thoughtful and it shows that it's just a matter of personal opinion or preferences or things like that, there's nothing wrong with that. I've bought books that had some negative reviews because honestly, that person doesn't speak for me, and what they had an issue with, I don't. You know what I mean? When it comes to my reading preferences. But like you said, Penny, if we're consistently seeing reviews that mention editing problems or transition problems, or that, you know what I mean, something seemed wrong with like production level, that's on you as the author. That is not their experience. That is quite literally, there's something wrong with how the book is being presented to the market,
Right. Exactly. Okay. So signal number two.
Signal number two. Okay. Visibility and impressions. And this is great. I love this. I live in this space a lot. So how often your book is being seen. So these are search impressions, category visibility, ad impressions, page visits. We focus on this so much. Like, so much of our work focuses on what you could broadly refer to as the first impression, right, Penny?
Yeah, absolutely.
We are huge on ensuring our clients are making the best first impression possible. That is really what, at the core, the foundation of all of our work, we want to see that happen before anything else happens, right? Like, because if that first impression isn't primed, you're wasting your time and money on a lot of other things, right?
Right. Exactly. And impressions, I mean, look, anybody can get impressions. You can run ads on Facebook and
Right.
get like a bazillion impressions, but without impressions, without conversions,
Mm-hmm.
impressions have no predictive value. True.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like to talk about impressions when it comes to ad sales, but impressions alone are just nothing.
Yes, exactly. You don't want to send traffic somewhere where people aren't going to be impressed. End of story,
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Is you don't get those people back more often than not. Like, you may go and end up fixing some things, which is fabulous. We do that for a lot of authors as well. We talked earlier about how some people reach out to us once they start feeling stuck. And we go, well, we can actually make some really great suggestions and we can work on this with you. And that's fabulous. But unfortunately, the people that already engaged with their book at some point probably aren't going to come back, so you're relying on, future impressions. But the thing is, you can't sell. But I mean, again, so now that I've gone off on my rant on making sure you make a good first impression, you still can't sell a hidden book. So here we are back to the beginning where, the visibility and those impressions do matter. Just make sure you're sending them somewhere they want to be. But, good impressions with poor sales, like we were just talking about, Penny, that's a conversion problem. That means once they get to your book, they're not impressed. So there's a disconnect somewhere, and I realize that's hard to imagine, and you don't want to think about that being the case. But the sooner you kind of come to terms with that, the sooner you can fix it. So, but low impressions, but you have a good reader response. So you're getting thoughtful reviews, you're getting some decent sales, but not great sales. You're like, why aren't they better? Everybody loves my book. I'm getting great reviews. That's a discoverability problem. That means you're not getting enough positive impressions with the right people. And, honestly, if we had to choose, we love that because that's a much easier fix.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so here's an example. Strong reviews, great cover, minimal impressions. That means that's low visibility. So you want to tweak what's going on with your categories, your keywords, your ads. Maybe you're not running any Amazon ads at all. So that leaves a huge, opportunity right there for some really smart strategic Amazon ads. When keywords and categories are cleaned up and you start, those smart ads. Again, I'm emphasizing smart for a reason. If anybody's caught on that I've said that a few times, just running ads and checking that off your list doesn't work, right, Penny?
Right, exactly. Very,
Yeah.
very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great way to spend a lot of money without getting anything done,
Yeah.
But then you start doing some promos, you run some Kindle limited time discounts, things like that. Anyway, but so once you're ready to convert, you start doing smart things to send quality traffic. And by quality, we usually refer to that as something that you can target versus a hope and a prayer, So if there's any sort of targeting that you can do. So we're talking about genre fans, people that are aligned for your topic if you write nonfiction, things like that. So we're really big fans of targeted impressions versus just impressions overall, because people can throw big numbers at you and that sounds great because you're like, well, gosh, if 10,000 people see my book, think how many sales I'm going to get, right? But if none
Right.
of those people are your people, it doesn't matter.
Right. That's absolutely true.
So
And
impressions are definitely a quality over quantity thing sometimes as well. There is a happy medium in there.
well, and what's interesting is I know we talk a lot about Amazon ads. We had an author years ago. I don't know if you remember this, and this author wanted to put a billboard up on.
Yes.
Do you remember that? Do you
Yes.
remember that? It wanted to put a billboard up somewhere in Los Angeles, right? So, okay, a lot of people, and she was like, "Oh, people are going to be stuck in traffic. This is going to be awesome. I'm going to get a lot of." And I tried to talk her out of it. Like, this is really not a good use of your money, blah, blah. Anyway, whatever. So the billboard happened and nothing happened. Right?
I know this is where we need one of those wah wah buttons, like with a sound effect.
I know. Wrong answer. So that's like you got a ton of visibility, but the visibility, without sales isn't a success. Like,
Right. Exactly. And again, at the beginning of this, when we talked about like this can be these are some very simple but very smart fixes. So keywords, this is a huge one. I can't tell you how many times, Penny, week by week, month by month, the conversation that I have with clients. And I love seeing that light bulb moment when we discuss keywords and the fact that like what the keywords that really drive quality traffic are typically not, I'm just going to throw it out there, typically not what your publisher or publishing service is going to recommend. It's probably not what you're going to come up with. And that's because it's less about your book and more about buyer behavior, buyer psychology. And that is really something you have to study and track long term. That's not something that you just show up and go, oh, I know what these are. It's not impossible, but it is like our focus is very much on connecting the dots between what readers are looking for and helping them find your book. And that
right.
is not as simple as throwing out, well, my book's about this, so this is what my keywords should be. That is not the right way to do it. Same thing with categories. Categories are tricky because, I fully recognize that there are we've worked with some amazing books, but just based on what they write about and what genre they're in, Amazon's just getting more and more competitive,
Yeah.
So some genres just have very, very competitive categories, and there's a ton of books in every single category. But, we make a point to dig out those unique elements of your book that help you get into less competitive categories. And what that does, it also introduces you to a more defined reader audience, which is very promising in terms of breaking through that noise, getting in more niche markets where you are getting in front of people that are specifically looking for books very much like yours versus a broader concept of I like thrillers. You know what I mean? That's a lot to wade through, right, Penny?
Right, exactly. And the thing, what's interesting is we were developing this show, something that I realized is that authors often chase noise because noise is easier to chase than signals.
Right.
Truly. right?
The instant gratification of it, right?
And right, exactly. And what's really interesting is that once you start to see that, once you really understand the difference between noise and signals, you really understand, you really will start, when you start to look at different things that are offered out there in the industry, you realize that a lot of it is noise.
Mm-hmm.
You
100%.
know?
And a lot of what's being sold is noise. Sorry. Now Amy just got snippy.
No, it's really true. So
I know. And we had a lovely email. Can I mention the email that I got recently?
yes, let's talk about it.
We had, again, I won't take up a bunch of everybody's time on this, but it made me so happy because an author reached out and they were feeling frustrated because they've been doing the things, like we've been talking about. They've been doing the things, they've been generating noise. They were feeling stuck. They had actually been reaching out to quite a few different groups and agencies trying to figure out who could give them a better path forward that felt more, focused.
Mm-hmm.
And my response to this author was actually not about talking to them about how we can market their book and what kind of programs we have for them. My response was actually about their cover because it wasn't ideally aligned for for the topic they wrote in Penny.
Mm-hmm.
And their response was, "Thank you so much. You were the first person that has actually given me any sort of direct, specific feedback about what's going on with my book right now. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. I want to know why what I'm doing isn't working and I want a better plan forward." And he said, "I'm going to get my cover fixed up and then I want to talk about next steps and what we can do to start fresh." And it was
That's
amazing.
fabulous.
I know. And it's like, that is exactly what we're talking about here, right? Is focusing on ignoring the noise, right? And focusing
Mm-hmm.
on the signals and what actually works. And I think that is a reasonable lead into our next signal, right? Which is conversions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. But to your point is that this guy was probably sold a lot of noise versus selling.
Exactly. A bunch
You
of
know what I
people
mean?
going, we could do this, we could do that. Big numbers. You know what I mean? Like flashy stuff that sounds very exciting and it makes you feel like, great, that'll do all the things.
Yeah.
And he was done hearing that.
Which I think is which it's unfortunate that he got to that point, but it's also fortunate for him that he did. Right.
Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
unfortunate that he's been so discouraged, that he's been sold a bunch of noise out there. And what's interesting is that years ago, and maybe there are companies out there that are still doing this, I don't know, but where they would write a press release and send it out to, they'll fax it. And now I sound like I should get in my DeLorean and hop back to 1985. But they would send a press release out to 1,000 media people, and oh my gosh, that's amazing! It's so amazing, and that's just a bunch of noise. Like it literally, I've never had a single author that has done that come back and say that was one of the best uses of my money.
Oh gosh, no, never.
You know what I mean? So yeah. So anyway, so signal 3. All right. So conversion. So here's the reality on Amazon, which I realize we're all very hyper focused on. A healthy conversion rate for the majority of genres falls somewhere between 5 and 10%. Okay. So what that means is that for all the traffic that you're sending to your retail page, 5 or 10%, between 5 and 10% of that traffic converts into a sale. Okay. Here's something else to consider, right? If you improve your conversion rate by only 1 to 2 percentage points, that could change your life.
That crazy?
That is so crazy. So when we think about, if you're listening to the show and you're like, oh my gosh, I get it. I have a bunch of noise going on. This sounds really hard. Don't think about this in terms of improving your conversion rate by, okay, so I want you to improve your conversion rate by 50%. No. I want you to think about improving your conversion rate between 1 to 2%. That can equate to doubling any kind of ad spend that you may be doing. Truly. Because the majority of authors aren't looking at improving, just making these minor adjustments. And Amy and I, we have seen this over the years where you make the emails that she just cited. Now, changing up a book cover, that's a big percentage point of a change. Like, I get it. But sometimes we've seen authors that just change up small pieces of their book description, and making those kinds of minor changes can equate to the 1 to 2%, that you should really shoot for. So, noise. Okay. So conversion rate noise. All right. When a lot of times the authors will come to me after they've been running Amazon ads for a while, or any kind of ad, right? And they are celebrating this really high click-through rate. People are clicking, my ad must be great. They're clicking through, but they're not blaming, nobody's buying their book. And so they're blaming Amazon, right? Instead of the retail page, the way the retail page looks. Here's the other thing though, too. If you have a really high click-through rate on your book, and so you're sending people from Amazon, or you're sending them Facebook or wherever, and they're clicking over to your page and they're not buying the book, that tells Amazon that your book is not relevant to the category / keywords, and it impacts your overall visibility for your book. Because Amazon wants to sell something, and they don't care if it's your book or your neighbor's. So if you're sending a lot of traffic to that page, it also, I'll tell you something too. If you are sending a ton of traffic to your retail page and you're running Amazon ads, your ads, and nobody's buying your book, your ads are going to cost more, because Amazon's like, well, Joe over there with his book, and he's sending all this traffic, like, they're not going to keep. So, your 50-cent bid went up to $5, because they're like, well, you're going to have to pay for that exposure because your book's not selling anyway. And so we're at least going to make some more money off of that. And that's kind of how Amazon, right? You know what I mean?
Diabolical.
It's very diabolical, right? So the conversion is a signal, right? The noise is literally just, I have so many people going to my retail page and I'm super excited and everything is awesome, and it actually really isn't awesome, right? So things that can make, and we talk about I led with this kind of talking about the 1 to 2% change, right? So think about your book cover. Obviously, that's the first thing. Is your book sitting in the right genre? Okay, that could be a 1% change if you're just, if you're shifting into a better genre for your book, right? Don't put your book in a genre that you think it should be in. Put it in a genre that it actually belongs.
Right.
Sorry that I have to say this. 6 years of this show.
Mm-hmm.
What we see it all the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cover, obviously, okay, so cover I mentioned, title, subtitle, all of it has to match your reader expectations. I taught a class a couple of weeks ago and I said, look, I don't care what you like. I don't care what you don't like. Doesn't matter. The only thing that matters in this whole conversation is your reader. That's it, right? You have write for your reader. Your description has to be written for your reader. Your subtitle, your title, all the things, all of that has to be, with your reader in mind. The other piece of it, though, too, is that, and this is where authors really love to bury the lead, all your social proof. So your blurbs, your awards, your review quotes, lead with that. Put that at the top of your your book description on Amazon, right? And this is oftentimes where we find the quickest wins, because
yep.
Right? I mean, truly, because authors are, you're bearing the lead, your book description isn't tight enough, blah, blah. Maybe your cover is great, but your book description kind of leaves a lot to be desired. This is the 1 to 2%. I mean, this is where we see a lot of these things that can potentially change your life.
Well, and I love how you mentioned it's all about the reader, Penny, because I have another great real life example that happened recently. And again, to the point where letting everybody know, and this is not to make you all feel inadequate or uncomfortable, but it is so easy to get too close to your own work.
Oh my gosh.
To be objective about a lot of this. So if you're feeling frustrated, keep in mind that a lot of it could be because you're too close to your own work. and be willing to go beyond that, because we had a client very recently that after we did, you mentioned we were talking about keywords, categories, all these things. We had a client very recently that after we did some of our keyword and category research, made our recommendations, was really pushing back on like, no, I'm not that, I'm this, I'm not that, I'm this. Like I'm very, and it's like, hey, these are our professional recommendations. This is your book though. You know what I mean? So, but they ended up winning an award for a category that we had recommended that they insisted they didn't want to be in.
That's amazing.
Yes. And they were like, okay, we give in, like go. And they fully recognized, they're like, all right, we get it now. Like,
Yeah.
they fully owned the irony of all of that. But it's true. It's one of those things that obviously, because they entered into a very genre specific award system. And obviously these are people that know the genre, like they are into it. If they are handing out awards for different subgenres within a major genre, they know what people are looking for and they know the difference of what readers are seeking out depending on which subgenre they're into anyway. But it was amazing and it felt good both ways. And it was a great moment with the client too, because it was a learning moment,
Yeah. Yeah.
You get to post your own work and you think one thing, but that doesn't mean that is how it is being perceived on the retail side and how it fits into the current landscape of what's out there, right?
Yeah.
Because that matters too.
Yeah, exactly. And, at the end of the day, look, people, a lot of times authors, when I have a conversation with them and I'll ask them, what are they doing to promote their book? They'll say, well, I'm running ads on Facebook. But the rest has kind of fallen by the wayside, right? Like nothing's really been done with the retail page, yada, yada, yada. Ads don't sell books, product pages do.
Yeah.
Right. At the end of the day, that is it. And you've got to work it. And that's one of the reasons why, and you can go back through some of the shows that we did in 2025. We talk a lot about aligning yourself with a publisher who's willing to work with you on your retail page, who is willing to make, don't get, sorry, I'm not going to go down this tangent too long, but do not work with a publisher that is going to that doesn't give you any kind of input in terms of the retail price of the book or what's on your retail page. Because we've had authors who show up with books who have, the book is priced at like $60.
Right.
And you can't, there's literally nothing that you can do to fix that. There's no amount of anything that you can do to fix that. So.
Exactly. And same for publishing services. I think a lot of authors, and while now I'm, adding on to Penny's not rant.
We're just piling on this sidebar topic.
But it's worth it because I think a lot of authors feel that if they use a publishing service, they have a lot of autonomy still. And while you may technically have more autonomy or feel like you do versus going through a publisher, if you use a publishing service, you are still at the mercy of their systems.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
A lot of times they are using their systems to connect your book with Amazon and other retailers and things like that. So it's still an important question to ask. So even if you're using a publishing service where you feel like you're doing most of the legwork, but they're just connecting the dots for you, you still want to double check at what you do and don't have access to and how it matches up with what Amazon offers, because that happens a lot too, where somebody will use a publishing service and they basically offer half the features that Amazon does. And you're basically SOL because they well, you used our system and our system doesn't, play nice with Amazon in these 3 areas. So you just don't get those features. It's
right.
Like, what? Mind numbing.
Right. I know. Yeah. It's really, it's amazing. Anyway, now that we've gone down that, obviously we have, as all of you know who have been listening for a while, we have strong feelings about the great many things.
But I love this next one.
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, reader retention and series backlist behavior. So this is huge because long-term author success isn't about one book launch. As much as it's very exciting to launch a book, especially as a debut author, some real talk here, it's really about your lifetime reader value and how many people come back to you for your next books. And I realize some of you listening, or maybe you have one book in you, it's a very specific project that you're doing. Fine. This is not for you. But for everybody else,
skip to the next segment. Sorry.
Yeah, do the little fast forward button. But for everybody else listening that does plan to release more than one book, it really does matter. So that's book 1 to book 2 if you write a series. It's your standalone book to your next standalone book. And all this gets fed through not just producing good products and having everything that we've said to up until this point, having a great retail page, generating quality impressions. What also matters is what you're doing in between releases. So building your email list, building your social following, and your content creation, whether that's, again, through a newsletter, through a blog, through social. There's so many different ways to do it. We've done tons of shows on all the different ways, so we won't go into that right now. But when readers stick with you across multiple books, your ROI improves dramatically. And that's a very tough conversation that we have to have with authors a lot. New authors that have released a book that have spent a bunch of money to get their author business literally off the ground. They took this huge step, right, to write a book, to publish their first book. And it's tough when it's like, wow, there's a lot of front end investment. Even if you're doing it on a shoestring budget, it is still a pretty decent front end investment to launch an author career.
Mm-hmm.
And it just like, but the thing is, it shouldn't be that surprising because we say it all the time, but launching an author career is very similar to starting any other small business. Hopefully it turns into a big business, but
right.
Like, let's start realistically. But the reality is anybody that starts a business puts more in upfront. And if you do all the right things, it starts coming back to you, right?
Yeah.
Doing all the right things. It's like, it's simple math, but it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes because it can feel like an uphill battle for a while. But again, that's why we do this podcast. Doing the right things, avoiding some of the missteps that a lot of authors have gone through before makes a huge difference. These are small tweaks too. I love that we have so many examples, Penny, that are relatively easy to implement. We're not talking about big sweeping, if you liked this next, or if you like this, read this next. Like, you have to tell people how to engage with you. And I realize it sounds very weird, but people don't like to have to make a lot of decisions when they're shopping, when they're looking for their next book. They want something that seems like a sure thing. So own it. Sound confident in your work. So if you like this title, you definitely want to read my next title. Talk about it. There's a lot you can do with your Amazon Author Central content in this regard, just as a little tip there. Series branding, also very important. We talk about this a lot when authors will come to us and they've released a few books and they're like, I don't know what's going on. It feels a little dead in the water. A lot of times we will notice that covers are not consistent. The way titles and subtitles are treated, even the font styles there's no consistency or cohesion to the books. And that's a big problem for shoppers, for consumers, right, Penny?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense in their brain.
Well, and that's where I think a lot of authors, so we talk a lot about the letter in the back of the book, right? And I've taught this in classes. We experimented on this with an author, Christina George, a bunch of years ago, where a letter that I actually wrote in the back for the book. And I said, let's put this in your book. And using the letter to help convert readers to fans, to super fans, to reviews, to all the things, right? So you have to really tell readers what you want them to do. So the letter in the back of the book, like Amy mentioned, so add a clear, like, if you like this, read this next. You really have to make it, because there's so much stuff that gets thrown at us at any given time. Like, unless you're just selling to your mom and your family, they're probably going to invest more time. And like, the average reader is not going to like, oh, is this part of a series? This looks really different. Is this part, like, they're not going to spend that kind of time. They're going to move on to the next thing.
Yeah, they're going to move on to the easy decision.
They're going to move on. So you have to be, this is why we always say details matter to readers. Don't be a great box on Amazon, your picture on Amazon. I mean, everything has to feel like, we have a branding episode, I know, coming up in a couple weeks, I think, but, you really have to you have to connect the dots for them.
Yes.
And this has nothing to do with the intelligence of your reader at all. It's just that we don't want to have to figure stuff out.
No, everybody listening has been shopping online before, and think how easy it is to go like, okay, this is what I went here for. Oh, but then there's this. Oh, and there's this other thing, but this one has better reviews. Maybe I want to look at this one instead. Or, you know what I mean? And especially on Amazon, where they try to distract you intentionally because somehow they figured out that sells more things.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you don't really want. yeah,
Yeah.
you don't really want this because this is on prime sale and like they were, I would love to see,
Oof.
and I'm sure,
Yeah.
I would love to see the statistics on how many people, how long. So we know that on an average website, we spend like 1/50th of a second deciding if we want to stay there or if we don't. But I bet you the Amazon number is a lot lower. Sorry, did I make this podcast just totally depressing right now? But seriously, I bet that number is really, and I bet it's lower because we're, a lot of times we're on our phones and there's other stuff happening, and there's distracting things that Amazon posts on there. No, I think you'd rather have this, whatever. I think that number is probably much lower,
Oh yeah, for sure.
So anyway, so all that to say, show up with your A game.
Right. Exactly. And now I love that. Okay, so we've talked about response, visibility,
Yes.
conversions, retention. The fifth signal is a little different, and it's about author behavior. So if you've kind of been tuning in and out as we go on our rants, this is when you really want to dial in.
Right. So, and I love the notes. So we both make notes in the show notes, right? Like adding our own kind of thing, depending on which segment that we're taking. So consistent author activity, Amy added a little note in there, not random hustle, which is something, so it's such an Amy thing that she would say. So basically, and people have asked me for years, like, okay, so we've been around for 25 years. Like, what is the secret of our success? First off, we do really good work. We have awesome people. I'm so fortunate in that way. But we're very consistent in what we do to promote the company. And the difference between success and failure not only is focus and all the things that we've talked about so far in the show, but is consistency. So are you just consistent about doing, a few smart things, or are you consistent, and consistent marketing efforts outperform sporadic effort, even at a lower intensity. So a lot of times authors are just like, I'm doing all these things, I'm doing all this stuff. And then they start on Monday, and the new year is kind of the time for that. Like, okay, January, man, I am going to hit the ground running. I'm going to do all 50 things this week. It's going to be really awesome. And by week 2, they're like, now I'm just tired because, who can keep up with that, right? Consistency, even at a lower intensity, will beat it. Consistency beats crazy, lots of noise every single time. In fact, what's interesting is, so when I was first in business, and this is, I say I because this pre-Amy, I had a weekly newsletter. Sorry, now she's gonna pass out. So you're gonna hear a thud, everybody listening. So we had a weekly newsletter. I blogged weekly. We did all this stuff, and we did it weekly, right? What we found out quickly is that a lot of that was noise. Even though it was helpful information, it was very noisy, right? And so we're still consistent. We still have the blog. We still have the newsletter. Now we have layered the podcast on top of that, but we reduced the amount of time. Now the newsletter goes out once a month, right? The blog happens. So we have a blog that posts on Friday, which is always our podcast wrap up. And then we have 2 Tuesday posts. So we've lowered the consistency. We've lowered how many times we post. We've lowered the noise. We stay consistent, and we've upped the value, and we've upped the quality. And I think if that's your only takeaway from this 5th segment, that really should be it, right?
Exactly.
Even like people want, so this is the thing, right? And I know that I know if you've listened for a while, I know I rag a lot on TikTok, like I get it. But TikTok has amplified the noise to a great degree. And some people go viral on TikTok and they do amazing and they get all kinds of like movie deals and life is awesome. But I'll tell you something too. So we hear these stories where we're like, I want to do that. I want to put up viral. But there's a book published every 8 seconds. So if the majority of authors who were on TikTok were going viral and getting movie deals, that's literally all we would hear every single day. But I mean, when you think about it, like when you think about the numbers, right? When you think like That's literally the only thing that the news would be able to report on. And that would be an awesome world. I just have to say, like, that would be an awesome world. The truth is that just doesn't happen, right? Viral posts do happen, but a lot of times they happen kind of in a vacuum because they don't really have any sales lift. Okay. Right. And I've actually had posts, this is so ridiculous. I've had posts on my personal page that will just go like viral where I'm taking a personal Facebook page, I should say. I'm taking a screenshot and sending it to Amy, and it's been shared over like 1,000 times. I don't see any sales lift with that. Like, people just like to share stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Again, sometimes it does get, awesome things happen, and we know the success stories, and those are great, and we aspire to those. But try, if you're listening to this and you're on every platform and you're doing all the things and you're just exhausted, try pulling back. Mm-hmm. Pull back and instead figure out something that is more, that is easier to repeat so that you can up your consistency. I would rather see y'all listening up your consistency rather than throwing out more noise. So fewer tactics executed well. Random hustle feels really productive, but it's not. Strategic repetition is actually way more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to do a quick recap of the 5 signals because
go for it. Yes, do it.
We've covered so much, and I want to point out that you can't just do one of these correctly. It's not going to completely cover you. You can't compensate, for one or the other. Like, you really have to focus on all of these. And it doesn't mean you have to do all of them perfect as soon as the show is over. I get it. But you really want to focus, make sure that you are being realistic and honest with yourself about how you're performing in these different areas, because it really does matter. And they all, again, it's cumulative. So again, if you're seeing good reviews, but maybe sluggish sales, and you're like, what? Clearly people like this book. So what is going on? That's a discoverability issue. So you need to work on your discoverability. If you're doing a lot and making a lot of noise, but you're not converting anybody, so you're not really selling books, but you're putting in a lot of effort to get your book, quote unquote, out there, it's likely a packaging or a pitch issue. So there's a disconnect in your effort with what they are seeing when they get to your book page. So that needs to be looked at. Like, what are they not getting when they land there that is leading them to not click buy, right?
Right.
So, and then decent sales on book 1 with no read throughs. So this is a series or multi-book author issue. But if if book 1 did great and things immediately fell off, or if you write standalone books and, your first couple of books were okay, but your next ones are just dead in the water, and like, what is going on? Clearly, this is a retention issue. You're losing people after they read the one book. And that is fixable too, but you have to work on what you're doing to retain readers from book to book. And then, Penny's point, crazy, messy activity, inconsistent results, kind of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. That is obviously a strategy and a consistency issue. All of these things are fixable. Discoverability, how your retail page is packaged, retention, your consistency. These are all very much within your control, which is awesome, because if we did a whole show on things you couldn't control, you can go rock in a corner. But
indeed, yes.
Fortunately, everything we've covered so far is within your control.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, though, too, is that, when authors stop chasing noise, momentum gets quieter and more powerful. And I think if we can give you any advice for the new year, it would be to stop chasing the noise. Mm-hmm. Because the noise will, the noise feels like it's really just super exciting, but it's not. And it's, we want, part of the reason why we developed the show path for this year that we did is because we really want this to kick off, with a very strong series. Obviously, hopefully every month we'll do that. But we wanted to kick this off with some directional focus, right? In order to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. And remember, again, small targeted tweaks in even one signal can change, even though they all matter, as Amy pointed out, they all matter. But even, small tweaks can really dramatically change your results. So don't think like you have to completely burn everything to the ground and start over. Thanks, Amy and Penny. You just started my year off. Well, listen, we really hope that you have enjoyed this first episode. Happy New Year, everybody. We're so excited to be here. And we hope that you had a really great holiday season and you're all ready to kind of, get back at it and dive in. And we have a whole series of really exciting and cool shows coming up for January that we hope that you'll listen to. Want to remind you again, we love reviews wherever you listen to podcasts. Text the word podcast to 888-402-8940 and you can speak with us directly. We've gotten some show ideas. We've gotten some show feedback. Just all the things. We love to hear from you. These shows are created for you to help you guys succeed. So we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.